Somewhere in this world, a woman sat in silence, staring at a man she once called her soulmate. He was present but absent. He was near but distant. He was hers, yet she felt alone. Every morning she cooked his meals, washed his clothes, stood by his side and waited to be noticed, to be loved, to be cherished. But love in her home had become a duty, not a gift. And then there was another presence, a man who did not own a fortune, who had no grand titles, just a humble houseboy who saw her not for what she could do, but for who she was. He noticed when she was tired. He smiled when she entered the room. He picked up the little things her husband ignored. He had no riches to offer, but his kindness made her feel like the richest woman alive. It wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't about disloyalty. It was about being seen, about knowing that her love, her presence, and her worth were not to be taken for granted. Love is not just a word. It is action. It is effort. It is consistency. A woman does not wake up one day and prefer another man over the one she vowed to love forever. But neglect, that's a slow poison. And sometimes the ones you think are beneath you will treat your queen better than a king who forgot her worth. Let this be a wake-up call. Relationships are not kept alive by grand beginnings, but by the little moments in between. If you do not water your garden, do not be surprised when someone else admires the beauty you left to wither. A husband who fails to cherish his wife risks losing her to the one who does. It is not about money. It is not about power. It is about love that is nurtured, respect that is given, and appreciation that never fades. To every man who still has a woman who loves him, wake up before it's too late. Love her like she's the most precious gift you've ever received, because one day, if you don't, you might turn around and find that someone else already has. In the beginning, everything felt right. Love was fresh, passion was alive, and every moment spent together felt like a dream. But as time passed, things began to change. The laughter that once filled the house became a distant memory, replaced by silence and routine. The husband, once attentive and affectionate, started to drift away, not physically, but emotionally. He became too busy, too distracted, too caught up in the demands of his own world to notice the loneliness growing in the heart of the woman he vowed to cherish. At first, she told herself it was just a phase, that he would come back to her, that things would return to the way they used to be. She excused the late nights, the absent-minded responses, the lack of interest in the little things that once mattered. She convinced herself that love sometimes goes quiet, that marriage is about endurance, not just romance. But deep inside, something was breaking. She longed for his touch, for his words, for a simple acknowledgement that she was still the woman he adored. Yet day after day, she found herself waiting for a glance, a conversation, a moment of connection that never came. Neglect doesn't always come in the form of betrayal. Sometimes it's in the little things that are no longer done. The good morning kisses that stopped, the texts that no longer came, the way he walked past her without a second look, the way he buried himself in work, in his phone, in everything but her. She began to feel invisible, like a shadow in her own home. She was a wife, yet she felt like a stranger. And then there was someone else, not a lover, not someone she sought out, but someone who simply saw her. A houseboy who had no power, no riches, no reason to be in competition with her husband. But in the quiet moments when no one was watching, he did what her husband no longer did. He noticed. He paid attention. He showed care in the simplest ways. A warm smile when she walked past, a helping hand when she was tired, a small conversation when she needed to be heard. He didn't make grand gestures or speak in poetry, but in those small, effortless acts, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Seen, valued, alive. It wasn't that she wanted to fall for someone else. It wasn't that she planned for things to change, but neglect has a way of opening doors we never intended to walk through. When a woman feels unseen for too long, she doesn't stop wanting love. She just stops waiting for it to come from the same place. Acts of service and entitlement are two forces that shape relationships in very different ways. In the early days, love felt effortless. The husband was attentive, eager to please, and willing to go the extra mile to make his wife feel special. But as time passed, something shifted. His gestures became less frequent, his words less kind, and his presence less meaningful. He settled into the comfort of knowing she was there, believing that love required no maintenance. He assumed that marriage meant she would always be his, no matter how little effort he put in. At first, she accepted it. She told herself that men express love differently, that responsibilities weigh them down, that maybe she was expecting too much. She carried the household on her back, taking care of everything, while he enjoyed the security of knowing she would always be there. The meals were prepared, the house was clean, his clothes were washed, and yet he never once stopped to acknowledge the effort behind it all. What started as love turned into obligation. What once made her feel adored now made her feel like a servant in her own home. Then came the contrast. Someone who didn't have the title of a husband, yet acted with more kindness than the one who did. The houseboy had no obligation to her. Yet he showed consideration in ways that felt foreign. He picked up the things her husband overlooked. He made small efforts that carried great meaning. He didn't see her as just a wife who was supposed to serve, but as a person deserving of appreciation. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't about attraction. It was about a feeling valued, feeling noticed, feeling like she mattered. The houseboy's simple gestures were not grand, but they were meaningful. Unlike her husband, he didn't assume she owed him anything. He didn't take her presence for granted. He understood that appreciation is not a duty, but a choice. And in that choice, she found something she had been missing for far too long. Unmet emotional needs are like cracks in a foundation. Small at first, almost unnoticeable, but over time, they grow until everything begins to fall apart. A woman doesn't stop loving her husband overnight. She doesn't wake up one day and decide to look elsewhere. It happens gradually. In the quiet moments where she feels alone, even when she's sitting right next to him. She wanted more than just a title, more than just being called a wife. She wanted to feel loved, to feel important, to feel like she was still the woman he once couldn't live without. But somewhere along the way, her husband stopped making her feel that way. Conversations became shorter. Eye contact became rare. The warmth in his touch faded, replaced by routine, by duty, by assumption. He believed that providing a house, paying the bills, and staying physically present were enough. But what he didn't realize was that love is not just about presence, it's about connection. She longed for words that reassured her, for gestures that made her feel special, for moments that reminded her why they chose each other in the first place. But instead, she found herself feeling empty, as if she were giving everything and receiving nothing in return. It wasn't that her love for him disappeared. It was that he stopped nurturing it. And when love is neglected, it doesn't die all at once. It fades piece by piece until it barely exists at all. And then, unexpectedly, someone else made her feel what she had been missing. The houseboy wasn't a man of power, wasn't someone she ever considered in that way, but he did something her husband no longer did. He paid attention. He listened when she spoke. He noticed when she was tired. He showed kindness not out of duty, but because he genuinely cared. And in those moments, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Seen, heard, valued. She never set out to find another man. She only wanted the man she married to love her the way he used to. But when emotional needs go unmet for too long, the heart doesn't stop searching for fulfillment. It simply finds it in places no one ever expected. The power of small gestures is often underestimated. Love isn't sustained by grand declarations or expensive gifts. It thrives in the everyday moments, the simple acts of care that show someone they matter. In the beginning, those moments were abundant. The husband used to notice the little things, like how she loved her tea a certain way, or how she smiled when he held her hand unexpectedly. He used to call just to hear her voice, used to compliment her, used to do things that made her feel love without even thinking about it. But as time passed, those gestures became rare. He assumed she knew he loved her, so he no longer felt the need to remind her. He assumed she would always be there, so he stopped making her feel special. The small moments that once brought them closer slowly disappeared, and with them, so did the warmth in their relationship. He still provided for her, still played the role of a husband, but the effort, the attentiveness, the appreciation, they were gone. She didn't ask for much. She didn't expect grand gestures or unrealistic romance. All she wanted was to feel cherished in the simple ways that once made her heart full. A thoughtful word, a loving touch, a moment of undivided attention. But instead, she found herself going through the days feeling invisible. Love no longer felt like a shared experience. It felt like something she was holding on to alone. Then, without meaning to, she noticed someone else. A person who, in the smallest ways, reminded her of what love should feel like. The houseboy never gave her flowers or wrote her love letters, but he did something even more powerful. He noticed her. He greeted her warmly every morning. He helped her with tasks her husband never thought twice about. He looked at her with respect, spoke to her with kindness, and in those small, effortless ways, he made her feel like she still mattered. It was never about seeking attention from another man. It was about realizing how much the absence of small gestures could make love feel empty. The same little things that once brought joy to her marriage were now being given by someone else, not because they had to, but because they genuinely cared. And in those quiet, ordinary moments, she felt something she had long forgotten, what it was like to be truly seen. Being taken for granted is one of the most painful experiences in a relationship. In the beginning, love feels fresh, exciting, and full of appreciation. Every gesture is noticed, every effort acknowledged. But over time, familiarity sets in, and what was once special becomes the husband no longer saw her as the woman he pursued, adored, and cherished. Instead, she became part of the background, always there, always reliable, always giving, until one day she realized she was giving to someone who no longer even noticed. She cooked his meals without being thanked. She dressed up, hoping he would look at her the way he used to, but his eyes never lifted from his phone. She tried to start conversations only to be met with distracted responses or silence. Day after day, she poured her love into a man who no longer felt the need to pour anything back. He assumed she would always be there, that she would continue giving without ever needing anything in return. He didn't think she would ever leave because she never had before. But there's a limit to how long someone can feel invisible. There's only so much a person can give without feeling completely drained. And when she had nothing left, when she stopped expecting love from the man who once gave it so freely, she found herself noticing kindness from an unexpected place. The houseboy never tried to win her over. He never spoke words of love or made any grand gestures, but he did something that meant more than anything. He acknowledged her. He thanked her when she helped him with something. He looked her in the eyes when she spoke. He smiled, listened, and respected her in ways that made her feel like a person again, not just someone fulfilling a role. She didn't want another man. She wanted to feel like she mattered. And when a person is constantly overlooked, when they feel like just another part of the furniture in their own home, it's only natural that the one who finally sees them stands out. The husband assumed she would never leave, never stop loving him, never look elsewhere. What he forgot was that love doesn't survive on assumptions. It survives on effort. And the moment he stopped putting in that effort, someone else's smallest act of kindness began to mean everything. A wake-up call for men comes not when a woman leaves, but in the moments before she does. When she begins to withdraw, when she stops trying, when the love she once gave so freely starts to fade. A woman does not lose interest overnight. She does not wake up one morning and suddenly choose someone else. It happens slowly over time in the quiet moments when she realizes she is giving everything and receiving nothing in return. Her husband had every opportunity to love her the way he once did, to hold her, to cherish her, to remind her why she chose him. But he grew comfortable. He assumed she would always be there, that marriage meant security, that love no longer needed to be nurtured. He forgot that love is not a contract. It is a living, breathing thing that must be fed with attention, with care, with effort. He ignored the signs, the way she no longer smiled as much. The way her eyes no longer lit up when he entered the room. The way she stopped. He made her feel seen. He listened when she spoke. He helped when she was tired. He respected her in ways that were once so familiar but had long been forgotten. He didn't try to steal her heart. He simply treated her with the kindness and attention she had been longing for. By the time her husband realized what was happening, it was love. Does not die all at once. It fades moment by moment until one day there is nothing left to hold on to. A woman does not walk away from a man who makes her feel cherished. She does not seek comfort elsewhere if she is fulfilled where she stands. But when love becomes a routine, when her presence is no longer appreciated, when she feels more like an obligation than a priority, she begins to detach, not because she wants to, but because she has no choice. At first, she fights for the love she once had. She tries to rekindle the connection, to remind him of what they once shared. She asks for time, for attention, for the smallest gestures that would make her feel like she still mattered. But when her words go unheard, when her efforts are met with indifference, she slowly stops asking. She stops trying. She stops waiting for something that may never come. Her husband believed that love was permanent, that once a woman commits, she stays no matter what. He assumed that because she was his wife, he didn't need to put in the same effort he once did. But love does not work that way. Love is not something that can be neglected and expected to thrive. It is not something that can survive on past memories alone. It must be watered, nurtured, and continuously renewed. And then, when she least expected it, someone else did what her husband no longer cared to do. The houseboy did not try to win her over. He did not set out to be the man her husband failed to be, but in the smallest ways, in the most ordinary moments, he showed her something she had been missing for far too long: care, attention, and respect. He did not assume she would always be there. He did not take her presence for granted. He simply treated her with kindness. And in that kindness, she felt something she thought she had lost forever: the feeling of being valued. By the time her husband realized she was slipping away, the damage had already been done. Love, once neglected for too long, does not return just because a man finally decides to pay attention. It must be protected every single day, because When it is lost, no amount of regret can bring it back. Love is not sustained by mere presence, nor is marriage kept alive by obligation alone. It thrives on effort, on appreciation, on the small, consistent acts that remind a partner they are still cherished. A woman does not walk away because she wants to. She walks away because she feels unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. Neglect is the silent destroyer of relationships. And when love is not nurtured, it naturally seeks warmth elsewhere. It is not about status, wealth, or power. It is about how one makes their partner feel. A man who assumes his wife will always stay without putting in the work to keep her heart risks losing her in the most painful way, not to betrayal, but to the realization that someone else, in the simplest of ways, treated her with the love and respect she deserved. Let this be a reminder: never take love for granted. Never assume someone will always wait. Love requires effort, attention, and care every single day, because once it fades, no amount of regret can bring it back.